Dark Waters family, what's going on? It's your boy Dark Waters and we're back. Come to bring y'all some real true horror stories. I know that y'all been missing them. But I want to start off by saying Happy New Year's to everybody. I want to remind everybody that the Dark Waters family is the best. We've done things that nobody else has done or probably will ever do. And for the record, for those who think they can come over to the Dark Waters channel and just say anything, this is all piece of real estate. Having the ability to comment and speak your mind here is a privilege, it's not a right. We built this. You didn't build it. You do nothing but sit on your sofa and eat snacks. So don't expect that you can come over here and say and do anything, because we built this. Now let's get into the stories. I live in Fargo, North Dakota, and the winters here can be brutal. My husband is a long-haul trucker, so I spend a lot of time home by myself. Well, one Monday morning, I was outside shoveling snow from my front walkway. I worked on it for about an hour or so, then decided to go inside and get a cup of coffee. So I left the shovel outside, right on the front porch. After fixing my coffee and hanging around in the house for about 15 minutes, I headed back outside through the front door. When I looked around, I noticed my shovel was missing. Now, I knew I had left it by the door, right there on the porch. When I looked up towards our driveway, I saw someone shoveling snow right near the mailbox. Confused, I started walking in that direction, and I could see the footprints along the driveway. Now, naturally, I came to the conclusion that this person had my shovel. Why would they be shoveling out by the road? When I got within 20 feet or so from this person, I yelled, "Hey, you have my shovel." They didn't answer. Looking at the person, I could tell it was a female, especially by the long blonde hair. She was dressed in a dark gray jacket, no hats or boots. I yelled again, "Hey, what are you doing with my shovel?" That's when she looked up, and I swear I almost fainted. The face was that of a teenage girl, but she had this pale white skin, and her eyes were completely black. She stared at me and didn't say a word. For a moment we stared into each other's eyes. She didn't say a word. Then she made a quick movement, dropping the shovel. That's when she said in a very soft voice, "I need you to help me." Now I was dumbfounded. I'm standing here and this girl has dark black eyes. So I picked up the shovel, thinking I could use it as a weapon, and said, "What's your trouble?" Again, she looked at me for several seconds, not uttering a word. Then she said, "Can I have the shovel?" My reply was, "You can use it when I'm finished. Is that okay?" Then she said, "Thank you," turned, and walked down the street. I kept my eyes on her as she walked past several houses without stopping. Eventually, she walked far enough away from me so I couldn't see her in the snow. This black-eyed girl never came back for the shovel, and I still have no idea why she was shoveling the entrance to my driveway. When my husband got in, I told him about what happened. He simply replied, he's heard a lot about these black-eyed kids, but never here in Fargo. Wow, that was another great black-eyed kids encounter, ladies and gentlemen. Up next, Angela, one of the members of the Dark Waters family, decided that she wanted to read the Goatman Eyewitness Encounter. And this Goatman Eyewitness Encounter comes from Phantoms and Monsters blog, which, by the way, we do have the rights to use. I've said that multiple times. So let's get into this one. This is an eyewitness encounter from Phantoms and Monsters blog, where a man sees Goatman.
The witness was on his way home near Norway, Iowa, late one night after work. He almost always walked the train tracks because they were a straight shot towards the house. These train tracks ran past a cemetery which was alleged to be haunted, an old settler's cemetery. It's already dark and has been so for a few hours. There was no moon that night. As he walks near the cemetery, he starts hearing muffled footsteps behind him, but doesn't think much of it. Plenty of other guys walk home this way as well. So he keeps going, and the footsteps get louder and louder. About midway past the cemetery, he gets nervous, and the steps are getting closer, so he turns to look behind him. According to the witness, he saw a goat man, or the devil himself. He describes this thing as a man who basically had goat hooves and horns along the lines of the mythical Pan, and this thing was heading straight for him. Reportedly, all the snow around this creature was instantly melting as it walked through. The witness runs screaming like a banshee. He hears the clopping of the beast's footsteps behind him speed up to catch him as he's running. Finally, he gets past the graveyard and he sees the thing stop right at the edge of the cemetery. He continues running, stops to look back, and the beast just vanishes. One of his older co-workers confided that there was a tale about a goat man many years ago. It was supposedly a Polish immigrant who disappeared one night but returned as a creature several years later. There had been UFO and strange being reports around the same time the man had vanished.
What's up, Dark Waters family? I am back, and this is a quick intermission, a quick break where I just want to let you guys know what's coming next. So the next story is by a gentleman named Fox Mulder. Fox is one of the members of the Dark Waters family, and it's not actually his story, but it's narrated by him, and I think he did a wonderful job. I mean, he did an absolute wonderful job in the narration of this. So after that, you're going to be hearing the story from Bumpin' the Night. Bumpin' the Night is another YouTube horror narrator who wanted to do a collaboration, so we hooked it up and did it. And his story is his own story called The Red Man, and it's an encounter what someone had with this man that's got red skin in the woods. So the next two stories are coming right your way here on the Dark Waters channel, so I hope you enjoy them and stick around because there's a lot more to come today, baby. It's a whole lot more to come today. Buckle up your seatbelts.
This next story is about my Dogman sighting. It was Saturday, December 3rd. I was deer hunting just north of the Tuscarora State Forest. I placed my tree stand on the edge of a large field owned by a friend of mine, and we've been hunting this area for almost 20 years now. This trip started out like any other, but early this morning I saw something strange. It was about 7:10 a.m., and it was just turning light. I noticed a few deer in the distance running towards the state forest. Looking through my scope, I saw initially I thought were two coyotes following the deer. But these coyotes didn't look quite right. They were larger, almost like wolves. About 15 minutes later, I was watching a buck about 600 yards south of me in the open field when it bolted towards the trees. Then I saw a large, dog-like animal. It was slowly walking or stalking, I'm not quite sure, but it was headed in my direction. I was upwind from it, and it soon noticed me in the tree stand. It stopped, looked at me for a few seconds, then started walking towards me again. It was about 100 yards or so from me, and I heard it growling. This was not a dog or a coyote. It reminded me of a wolf, but the back was arched and the head was huge. The fur was very dark, and the legs were odd, with sparse hair. I thought about shooting it, but something told me not to. I was shaken as well. This animal really scared me. It once again stopped moving and looked at me for a few seconds. The face was that of a wolf, but the snout was shorter than any wolf photo I've ever seen before. It had steely eyes, almost like those of a human. Really weird. Something caught its attention, and it ran off towards the south. I stayed on the tree stand for about an hour or so, and didn't see anything during that time. When I did leave the stand, I was very cautious. I had no idea if it was in the area. I reached my car and left. I talked to the Game Commission officer later that day and reported the animal. He said that there had been a few reports of large dogs, but they were most likely coyotes. I told him that was not a coyote, but he didn't seem to care.
This story was told to me by my wife, and it actually happened to one of her friends. The man this happened to is a large, no-nonsense security guard. A really quiet dude who likes to joke and isn't dramatic. My wife tells me that it's weird for him to tell a story and to not have it end with a punchline. So early in November, somewhere in Dublin, Virginia, Paul was walking through the woods toward his tree stand. It was deer season. He excitedly arrived at the tree stand and took a seat at the top. Paul settled in and got comfortable. The only sounds he could hear were leaves scattering as they were blown around in the wind. That morning it was absolutely still. In his words, it was damn peaceful. After a time, he fell asleep. Paul jerked awake at the sound of scratching at the base of his tree. He said it was like a large cat or bear was stretching against the tree, putting its weight forward and scraping the bark off to mark its territory. Maybe a black bear or even a cougar. No way it was a deer though, and whatever it was standing directly under him. He leaned over the tree stand, trying to see what it was. As he did, it rushed away in the opposite direction and went behind the tree, just out of sight, leaves loudly crunching under its feet as it went. Paul waited to see what it would do, gun ready. If it was a bear, it might try to climb up the tree, and he might have to shoot it. He thought it might be easiest to scare it off before it got aggressive. He aimed his gun up and fired a warning shot. The blast echoed over the forest and everything became still again. He didn't describe it as being peaceful this time. This time he called it fucking eerie. Nothing climbed up the tree as he had feared, but nothing ran from behind the tree as he had hoped. Nothing moved at all, just leaves swirling around in the wind. Paul began to wonder if it was a person instead of an animal, maybe someone who was trying to play a trick on him but was too scared of being shot to move now. He shouted, "Hey!" No response. He shouted again, "Come out, say something. I don't want to shoot you, but I will if you don't say anything." Again, nothing. He waited and thought animals don't stay still for this long and it might be safe to come down. Paul slowly stood up and stepped onto the crude wooden step nailed on the side of the tree. As his foot touched the step, he heard someone move around to the other side of the tree. He decided that being afraid was not the best thing to do in this situation, and instead of panicking, Paul waited. Unfortunately, the other thing was just as patient as him, and he waited too. Neither moved as the sun changed positions and afternoon changed to dusk. Paul realized he had to pee, and if there was going to be a struggle, he could at least choose not to have it in the darkness. Paul stood and stepped onto the ladder again, and again the other thing scrambled around to the other side of the tree. He froze for a moment and then steadied himself and climbed down quickly, stumbling at the bottom, trying to ready his weapon, pointing it out, holding it tight against his shoulder. He walked backwards, stepping through the leaves, and he could hear it moving like it was trying to stay hidden. Paul circled the tree until he was standing under the tree stand, and he noticed the scratches, running parallel, 6 deep gashes in the tree. As he was looking at the marks left by the other thing, he saw a red arm. No mistake that it was a man, a red man. Paul was clear on this. I don't mean red like it was a Native American Indian, I mean he was red like a stop sign, like the devil is red. Paul lowered his gun and stepped backward, and as he did, the red man stepped out from behind the tree. He was completely naked and smiling huge, his teeth showing white the size of baseball cards in crooked patterns. His eyes were vacant and menacing. The red man never blinked as he stared. Paul took a step forward, and as he did, the red man mirrored his actions exactly. Paul took a step back, and the red man froze for a minute, but then moved forward. Paul raised his gun and pointed it at the red man. "Stay back!" he shouted. The red man began to walk towards him. Paul scrambled backward. He wasn't ready to shoot, not at another person. Paul stepped back and slung his rifle over his shoulder and began to run in the direction of his truck. He glanced over his shoulder and saw that the red man was just standing there, staring at him. He slowed down and watched the red man shrink as he moved away from him, smiling and naked. Paul lost sight of him a moment later, and it was dark by the time he reached his truck. He said, "Sometimes I lay awake, worrying if I'll see the red man again. Whoever he was, he let me go."
What's up, everybody? It's your boy Dark Waters, live from the porch in New Orleans, Louisiana, again with another quick intermission. Give you a little background on this. This next story I call Love is a Gun. It's the story of Ben and how Ben got involved in cryptid hunting, or the events that led to him becoming a full-time cryptid hunter and cryptid investigator, because he can no longer really do what he did before because he made some serious mistakes. So I wanted to share the story with you guys, and also, sidebar note, the events of the past 24 hours, I think it's amazing how people ask for the truth and they want the truth, and then when you give them the truth, it's a lie to them because it doesn't fit into this neat little box of what they want and what they believe. And so, of course, this video is going to have many comments from haters, which will never be seen. But to say this to I want to say this to the haters real quick, so you guys can understand this. You have an opportunity to hate on me and dislike me because I have the balls to show you my true personality. So even in your disdain and dislike, to you, some of you guys, I'm pond scum, nothing more than that, and that's fine. Even in your disdain and your dislike of me, what you have to realize is that opportunity is granted to you, unlike anybody else, because all of the other narrators won't share their personal life. They won't share the behind the scenes of what's going on. So even you not liking me is a result of me being different and better than those that you do like. Just food for thought. Going on to the next story. Ooh, it's windy out here. Let's go. There is a single force that is beyond measure, and upon its embrace, mankind can ascend to the heights of heaven or descend to the lowest depths of hell. This force is love. My story is one of love and defeat. You see, love is the most powerful emotion known to man, and my love for my client is what landed me in a 10-foot diameter hole in the ground in the middle of nowhere. Her name was Olivia, and to call her angelic is an understatement. She was and still is the most beautiful woman on the planet to me. Her mother was Brazilian and her father was German. Her father, Augustine, was a geneticist whose expertise landed him a top secret position with the national government. Augustine had the type of knowledge that made him a target for many governmental agencies around the world. So he and his family were always well guarded. But the corruption in their government ran deep. So deep that he reached out to my boss to request a private security detail. When I first received this assignment, I wasn't particularly excited about it at all. I spent a lot of time in that country on missions, and it wasn't to my liking. Extreme poverty and the violence was rampant. And on top of that, to have to be working for members of the oligarchy was not ideal. And at the end of the day, it was a paycheck. The other option was being in a desert or a jungle somewhere in Africa. Also, it paid very, very well. In 12 months, I was going to make what most people made in 3 years. So I took the assignment and organized a 4-man security team to accompany me there. When we finally arrived at the property, it was breathtaking. 15 bedrooms, Olympic-sized swimming pool, fountains, and the grounds were extensive, with stables, full of horses. This place is what the locals call Manamosa Mal, something I would come to learn about later on during my time there. As with any other private detail, the first thing my team and I did was meet with Augustine. Then we walked the grounds and assessed the threats. It was during his very first walkthrough with him and his servants that I first laid eyes on her. She was 6 foot tall and fucking amazing. The combination of her mother's Brazilian beauty and her father's German stature was the perfect blend of beauty and strength. Her long flowing black hair was in a ponytail and rested on her left shoulder. And from the moment our eyes met, I knew this was going to be a problem. So I did my best to ignore her and focus on the job at hand. From a security perspective, this place was a nightmare. There were large hills towards the back side of the property that would make a perfect sniping point. On the front side of the property, there was no barrier to stop cars from entering, simply a front gate. The walls that ran alongside of the property were 6 foot tall and made of bricks, but they weren't in good condition. What made it worse was that Augustin presented the biggest security threat. He constantly had people coming back and forth from the property, created a logistical nightmare. And his office was upstairs, located in the center of the house. After that first walkthrough, that's when I realized how much of a problem it was going to be to really bring this property up to par, and then transition the security over to another team within 12 months. The 6-foot tall walls needed to be 12 feet. The flimsy front gate needed to be replaced and a concrete barricade added. And his office had to be moved downstairs, so his guests didn't have access to the entire house. And on top of that, background checks needed to be done on all of his housekeeping staff. You see, the last family that occupied this property worked for the government as well. But they were brutally murdered, their heads severed and taken. And looking at the condition of the place, I can understand exactly why. 2 days later, construction started. And this was the first time I ever held a conversation with Olivia. We were in the stables. She was smart, beautiful, and kind. And I instantly fell in love. It took a few months before we finalized all the renovations to the house. And over the time, she and I began to grow closer and closer, finding time to sneak away and talk to each other, meeting away from the house at small coffee shops. One thing led to another, and as you can guess, we became intimate. A huge no-no for people in my industry. I will never forget the night they came to kill the family. I was there alone because I wanted some private time with Olivia and had sent my other team members away for the night. I sat there in the control room, watching her on the cameras as she walked out of the back door to the pool, took off her robe, and dove in. I won't lie, I was completely enthralled with her. But that night, my love for her and our secret love affair will cost us both everything. Watching her on the security cameras, I noticed the 5-man team scaling the walls on the far right side of the property. The team separated. 2 men heading towards the pool and 3 heading towards the front side of the house. Now, the only person I had left on the property that could possibly help me was Hugo. Hugo was a local that we trained in self-defense and tactical procedures, and he also worked as a servant on the property. Now, this team splitting up, 2 men going towards the pool and 2 men going towards the front side of the house, created a serious problem for me. Olivia, the woman that I had grown to love, was there alone swimming in the pool, while her father Augustin was on the opposite side of the house, very near to the area that the other 3 men were headed. I had to make a decision, so I hit the alarm button, hoping that Hugo could buy me a little time, and headed towards the swimming pool. As I moved, I could see Olivia underwater, swimming, slowly creeping up on her with these 2 men. Olivia was so oblivious to the amount of danger that she was in. I had 2 clean shots, but I would have to shoot through the windows. The first shot hit one in the back of the neck, dropping him instantly to the ground. The second hit the man in his head, and he fell into the pool. By now, I could hear Hugo shooting his shotgun in the kitchen. So I turned and headed towards the sound, only to find one intruder dead and Hugo bleeding out on the floor. Fuck. This was all my fault. I had sent the rest of the guys away so I can get some time alone with Olivia. And that single decision was going to bite me in the ass big time. But I had to force myself to focus. Where are these other 2 men? Pushing forward, I headed towards Augustin's office, and for a brief moment I caught a glimpse of Olivia out of the corner of my left eye. She now understood that we were under attack, and was closing the door to one of the downstairs safe rooms. Unfortunately, when I reached the office, Augustus was dead, and the other 2 men were gone. If you've never been in combat, it's hard to explain how fast things happen. But this whole ordeal took less than 9 minutes. This team was a professional team, just like mine. In a few minutes after I found Augustin's body, my crew came breaking into the house, locked and loaded, and cleared every inch of the mansion. When it was all said and done, I had failed to protect my client. And worst of all, I had allowed the father of the woman I fell in love with to be killed. And the straw that was going to break the camel's back was that I had to call my boss and tell him what happened. That night was the last time I ever saw Olivia. and it was my last high priority security mission. 2 days later, I found myself locked in a hole and left in darkness for God knows how many days. It was these events, on the other side of this failure and this loss, that I met Roger and Steve. They reached out to my boss for a private security team. Normally, this type of babysitting work, I would have never gotten. But after the Olivia incident, I was on his shit list. What's up, everybody? It's your boy, Dark Waters, and I am back with what I would say is the final segment of this little Dark Waters broadcast that we got going out to the entire world. But before I tell you a little bit about this, I would be remiss if I did not thank Angela, because Angela read the Goatman story, and I did not mention that earlier, so I want to say thank you, Angela. She's another one of the members of the Dark Waters family, and I appreciate you guys. And again, this is the only place where you get a chance to participate in the programming whatsoever. So thanks, Angela. You did a wonderful job. Angela's a very beautiful lady. I will tell you where to find her on Facebook, but I'm not going to do that because some of you guys might stalk her. So thanks, Angela. Next story coming to you. Dogs of War is one that everybody's been waiting on for quite a while now. Some of you may like it, some of you may not. Some may believe you, some of you may believe it, some of them may not. You know, I'm at a point now where I realize that everything is just not for everybody. And so, with that being said, let's get into Dogs of War. I was awakened from what I thought was a dream by my nurse. A beautiful woman with the softest hands I'd ever felt. ¿Cómo te sientes? She said in Spanish. How are you feeling? I feel fine, I replied. At least I thought I was feeling fine at the moment. However, I wasn't sure how I got in the hospital. The last thing I remember was being at work at the prison. Looking up at her, I said, "Why am I here? There was a riot at the prison, and you were injured. You don't remember anything?" Scratching my head, I thought, I remember yesterday morning. I remember having lunch. Chicken quesadillas my girlfriend had prepared. But that was it. Lying there, I could even visualize the faces of the men I worked with, but I couldn't quite remember their names. You know that feeling you have when the word you're looking for is right on the edge of your tongue, but you just can't remember it? That's exactly how I was feeling about everything. Also, just beneath it, there was something else. This overwhelming sense of fear, like something had gone terribly wrong. Part of me wanted to get out of the hospital bed and run as far away as I could, but I didn't know why. When I went to move my right leg, oh my God, the pain. Looking down, I had stitches from my inner thigh clear around to the other side of my leg. And as hard as I tried, I couldn't remember what happened to me. I looked up at the nurse and said, "What is wrong with my leg?" She went on to explain to me that I had deep lacerations and had lost a lot of pints of blood. Then she looked me square in the eye and said, "Sir, you're lucky to be alive." Little did I know at that moment that things were about to get a lot worse. She then told me my family was eager to see me, but before she could let them in, there were some men that I needed to talk to. "Tell them everything you know," she said, "and things will be just fine. As soon as they're done, you can see your family." Now at this time, I'm at a complete loss. Men from where? Maybe my job? What happened? 10 minutes later, she walked back into the room with two men. I noticed one gently touched her on the arm and smiled just before she walked out of the door. They exchanged this glance. There was not one of people who are strangers, but a glance of someone who knew each other. At that moment, it didn't make sense, but I did notice it. One was a very tall black man, lean and muscular. Another one was this short, pudgy white fellow. The black guy wore black dress slacks, a vest, and a white shirt. No tie, no jacket. It seemed as if he had been waiting so long that he decided to take off the rest of his clothes. The white guy was wearing a button-up Guayavera. He still had crusts in his eyes, like he had just woken up and rushed out of the house or something. Now these two men, they were intense. I mean, they had this look about them, like they had seen it all. And this eerie calm to them, like nothing I've ever felt. When you know there's something bubbling just under the surface, that's what I felt with them. The black guy started off by saying, "Do you remember anything from the prison riot?" How did it start? Honestly, at that moment, I couldn't remember anything. Then he opened up a folder, began to read out loud my life stories. He had information about me, my parents, my brother, how long I'd been down in South America, all the way down to my ex-girlfriend's name, and that she left me for an American, got her green card, then divorced him. Then he handed me this brown envelope, said, take a look at these and see what you can remember. Oh my God. The images that I saw, like something from a slaughterhouse. Severed limbs, decapitated bodies, blood splattered all over the walls. Instantly, my stomach began to turn and my esophagus filled as I felt nauseous. Do you remember any of this? What happened? He started to press me. But again, apart from the fact that I was about to vomit, I wasn't sure what the hell he was talking about. The only thing that felt real to me at this moment was that these two men were strangers who clearly worked for some other government than mine and were drilling me. After about a solid 30 minutes of questioning, they both got up and walked out, leaving me feeling relieved and also wondering why. Why are they here? Why would it be over a prison ride? A few minutes later, the pain in my leg became unbearable. So I signaled the nurse and she gave me a sedative that put me straight to sleep. I awoke the next morning and my father was at my bedside. Dad looked worried. He went on to explain to me that two men had come to the house and asked him questions about me and my job. In the first 60 seconds, I knew exactly who he was talking about. I realized it was the same two men who had visited me in the hospital just yesterday. This had to be serious. So my father left. I sat there in silence, trying to remember what happened that day. Slowly things started coming back to me. I remember walking the fences that morning while the prisoners were on the yard, and two of the inmates talking about perras de guerra, or dogs of war. They said they had saw them. That day all the convicts were talking about the same thing. That one memory opened the floodgates to the rest of my memories. The night guards had been talking about seeing large black dogs outside of the gates of the prison at night, so large that they were afraid to shoot. Well, that evening, while I was making my rounds around the inner gate, shit went to hell in a handbasket as one of the tower guards decided to take a shot at a smaller black dog. Before you knew it, they were rushing the fences. I saw one of them stand up on his two hind legs. This thing was massive. Within seconds, they had broken down the gates and were flooding into the compound. I turned and ran to cell block C. It just opened the door when I felt a sharp pain on my right leg. It felt like I had been tackled by something huge. My body flew, hitting the nearby metal stairway. And as I lay there in pain, I saw these dogs coming into the cell block. Some on all fours, others walking upright. I remember my friend Pedro firing shots at one of them before taking off running. Somehow the prisoners got out of their cells. Vision grew dark quickly, as if someone was turning out the lights. That was all I could remember. Later that night, the two men returned and questioned me again. Told them what I saw, but I didn't know exactly what it was. I figured it was best